Hi, everyone, and welcome to Intuitive Eating 101, where we are going to be covering the basics of intuitive eating. I'm Lindsay Carney.
I'm Lisah Sutton-Williams.
And we are just going to dive right in.
All right, so what is intuitive eating? Intuitive eating is a self-care eating framework which integrates instinct, emotion, and rational thought. Intuitive eating is an evidence-based mind-body kind of connection that helps you identify the kinds of foods that you want to eat and the kinds of foods that help your body function the best. Intuitive eating, despite its popularity recently in the past year and a half, was actually started in 1995 by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. So they've been doing this kind of work for 25 years and have seen some great results from it. There's probably around, I think, 120 evidence-based research papers that have been done for intuitive eating that have shown how beneficial this can be to someone's life.
So here we have the 10 principles of intuitive eating, and we are going to break each one down for you today. But just an overview. So the first principle is reject the diet mentality. Principle 2 is honor your hunger. 3 is make peace with food. Principle 4 is challenge the food police. 5, discover the satisfaction factor. 6, feel your fullness. Principle 7, cope with your feelings with kindness. 8, respect your body. 9, movement, feel the difference. And 10, honor your health with gentle nutrition.
So this first principle is reject the diet mentality. And that is really a big demand because diet culture is everywhere. It's so many different places. It's so nuanced and it's so ingrained into our everyday life. But basically this whole idea of rejecting the diet mentality is rejecting things that tell you that your body is not okay the way it is, or that you're required to eliminate foods or only eat certain foods in order to achieve this intentional weight loss. So anything that prescribes intentional weight loss is a diet. And this is one of the first principles in intuitive eating, is to let that go, because that really does not allow you to attune to yourself and actually allow yourself to be an intuitive eater when someone is telling you how and what you should be eating at all times.
Yeah. So these are just like some questions to ask yourself when you are beginning to embrace this concept of reject the diet mentality. So we'll just kind of go over a couple of these. First one is, what if you could achieve health without dieting? So that is just kind of considering the possibilities of life without going on a weight loss diet. Another one is, has a diet ever worked long-term? So really reflecting back on your personal experience with dieting. Have you ever been able to go on a diet, lose the weight, and sustain that weight loss over time? Or has that diet or weight loss ever given you the what am I trying to say here, Lisah?
I don't know what you're trying to say, but can I interject something really
absolutely.
Quick?
Yeah, that would be great.
So when you're talking about like diets and working long-term, the evidence that we know and that we have come in contact with shows that diets work 5% of the time in longitudinal studies, meaning over 5 years.
Yeah.
So if you were to see a doctor and they prescribed you something that they knew was only going to work 5% of the time, would you take it? More times than not, you would say, no, I'd prefer something else. I don't want the medicine that doesn't work 95% of the time. And so that's kind of what we talk about when we talk about longevity of diet culture and how it doesn't actually work for us.
Yeah. Thanks for interjecting there. Yeah. That's super helpful. Another question to ask yourself is, what keeps you going back on diets? And that kind of even ties into what Lisah was saying, is that because diets don't work, they often bring you back and suck you right back in. And another question is, how might you benefit from letting go of dieting? So if you were to say, okay, what if I wake up tomorrow and decide I am not going to participate in any sort of intentional weight loss or dieting? How might my life look different? What kind of space would that free up for you? So those are just some questions you can ask yourself, excuse me, to really start embracing this idea of rejecting the diet mentality.
And oftentimes that further incorporates into our kind of mental health, kind of standpoint. When people think about dieting, like dieting ends up becoming disordered eating. that has been normalized.
Yeah.
Because we're doing it so many times over and over and over again, like you think it's normalized because it is by society standards, but that's really just disordered eating.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
All right, honor your hunger. So this is principle 2. Diet culture paints hunger as an enemy or symptoms to overcome. In reality, hunger is your body's way of communicating a basic need of survival. Hunger is not shameful. It is necessary for life. And so basically that's what diets tell you. They tell you not to honor your hunger by saying, hey, you can't eat after this particular time, or you can only eat X number of calories a day, no matter if you're hungry. So honoring your hunger is simply just knowing, hey, my body's hungry and I deserve food no matter what. Yeah. It's not, I have to earn it. This is something that I need to get somehow, but that honoring your hunger part is really something that you have to do. So becoming intuitive eaters, we were actually born intuitive eaters. I don't know if you've ever seen like a sweet little baby when they're eating and maybe mom or dad tries to give them a bottle and they push it away. That's them telling you like, I no longer want that. But sometimes parents, they say, no, we got to eat. You have to finish this bottle. And so those hunger cues and those hunger signals of our intuitive nature start to be pushed away really early on. So this idea of intuitive eating is really us getting back to what we were all along.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of continue on that image that you gave with the baby, another concept that comes to mind for me is when we are hungry, it is not that we need to dismiss or deny our hunger. You know, in the same way that we would care for a baby when a baby expresses hunger, that's how we need to respond to ourselves when we express hunger, and not to resort to some of those like food rules and external cues for when we're supposed to eat.
Yeah. And that's where that interoceptive awareness comes into, which is really this idea that your body tells you what you need and you respond to it by giving it what it needs. Like, have you ever thought about just like sitting somewhere and being like, oh goodness, I think I need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Then you do, because you don't have this negative idea about going to the bathroom is really, really bad. And so I can't do that. But often we feel that way when it comes to hunger, like, oh, I just ate an hour ago. I shouldn't be hungry. Exactly. Like, where did we get that from? But that's like interoceptive awareness working right there, letting us know that our body needs something and we can fulfill that need.
Exactly. Yeah. So diving a little deeper into honor your hunger. So how to begin practicing this is you want to tune into your body's physical sensations of hunger. For some people, that might be just like a general feeling of emptiness, which might be sort of like a mild to moderate sense of hunger. And, you know, and then as it progresses, it might grow into like your stomach is growling, or maybe you notice your mood going down and getting a little agitated, or maybe just feeling tired. Those are all physical sensations of hunger. And so it's just about like tuning in and getting to know the way that your body communicates hunger. You also want to take into account how hunger is expressed in your behavior or mood, as I mentioned earlier. So sometimes, like, I know I have young kids, and sometimes when they get really irritated or like grumpy, I can say to them, hey, do you think you might be hungry? And then they're like, yes. And so the same thing can happen in adults as well, is, you know, our behavior becomes maybe a little bit more erratic or impulsive when we're hungry. So that's something else to consider and tune into. We also want to be curious about the qualitative experience of hunger. So I kind of mentioned that earlier. There is kind of this like spectrum of hunger. And so getting to know your body's mild early signs of hunger, and then what does it feel like when I'm moderately to severely hungry, and kind of getting used to being able to describe what the hunger actually feels like and being curious about it. And then you just want to trust your body's signals. So all of what we just discussed in terms of tuning into your body's cues and being able to trust those things instead of looking to those external cues or food rules, which we'll get into more later, to make decisions about eating, and just trusting your body.
Absolutely. All right, the next principle is making peace with food. Forbidding yourself specific foods can have a paradoxical rebound effect that triggers overeating. So this is one of my favorite ones, and maybe because it hits so home with me. was making peace with food, and which allows you to give yourself unconditional permission to eat. So when you have that, it's like all foods are foods. You know, all foods are available to me, you know, in that particular moment, but there are no good, there are no bad foods. It's just foods that I want to eat, maybe foods that I don't like. Something that Evelyn has said previously is that foods, there are no bad foods unless you're allergic or they're spoiled, you know, or they cause you some type of negative reaction. And that
or you stole them as well.
And that's the intuitive part of this, is like knowing which foods work for you, but also knowing like there's different foods that work for you that are not going to work with me. And that doesn't make them good or bad for either one of us. We just have to know ourselves the most so that we can know what works for us. Because when we don't do this and allow ourselves that permission to eat and, you know, just unconditional for foods, it sets us in that restrict binge cycle, which leads to that disordered eating and eating disorders, because you don't allow yourself to have certain foods. And then you could potentially binge on them. Then you restrict them again. Then you binge on them. Have you ever gone on a diet previously before we were so aware of intuitive eating and had that whole like last supper kind of meal before you start on Monday?
Yeah.
That is really just programmed restrictive and bingeful eating. And when you think about it like that, it hits a little different, because you've basically just decided that I'm going to plan a binge and then I'm going to plan to restrict. And that really has an effect on your emotions and your behaviors. But this making peace with food, once you've allowed foods to, you know, no foods to be off limits to you, and you have unconditional permission to eat, that really can change.
Yes. And that reminds me of another kind of metaphor that I've heard on that concept of like deprivation fueling a binge, is like, if you were being told, Lisah, I'm going to turn off your water tomorrow and you're not going to have any access to water, what would you do?
Yeah, I'd get as much water as I could, because that feeds into that scarcity that you're talking about. Absolutely.
And you would probably go to all the lengths
as
to
much as I could.
Collect all the water, to think about all the water that you need, to think ahead and prepare and get it all together before it gets shut off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, so these are just like some more examples of how diet culture is basically opposite to this peace with food concept that we're talking about. So, you know, diet culture says there are good foods and bad foods, and food peace says all food is nourishing, all food is permissible. Diet culture says I have to avoid bad foods to be healthy. Well, food peace says I can allow all foods and be healthy. Diet culture says I have to be more self-controlled around food. Food peace says I can practice unconditional permission around food. Diet culture says I am so bad for eating that. And food peace says my value is not tied to what I eat.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're talking about challenging the food police in this particular principle. So the food police comes in and tells you that those things are bad, or this particular thing is better than another thing. Or do you really think you should be eating that? That's a fun food police one. Are you sure you're hungry? Didn't you just have something like that? And those can be external things, or they can be internal voices that you've learned from diet culture that tells you, okay, I probably shouldn't eat after a certain time. The food police is telling you that, and those food rules previously learned in diet culture are telling you that too. And then you can have this kind of complex if you're doing the right thing or not. And when you challenge the food police, you do what works for you. And that's it, not for anybody else. You do what works for you and your body. And that's the main thing with this intuitive eating, is just trusting your body, because your body actually knows all these things. And as therapists, as we are, we know like the body keeps the score. Like, and to say that is true with food as well. It knows how you're going to react to certain foods. And so it gives you those messages all the time. It's just a matter of if we're listening, or we're doing some of these other diet culture things that aren't the best for our overall mental health.
Yeah. So these are some common beliefs that are enforced by the food police. And like Lisah mentioned, this can be the food police that's inside of us, or it can be the food police that is around us in our environment, or in our families, or in our communities. So I'll just kind of read over a few of these. So one of the things that I hear a ton about is that fats in food make the food fattening and will make us fat. And not to mention the fat phobic kind of messaging embedded in that statement, but also it's just not true. Our bodies need a certain amount of fat and certain kinds of fat to survive. And to believe that fats and foods make us fat is just kind of a very big misconception in the world of nutrition. Another one here that I kind of wanted to highlight is that people have to be skinny in order to find a perfect like partner or job or just, general happiness. And what we know is that health can be achieved in any body that you're in. And so you do not have to lose weight. You can opt out of this, constant pursuit of weight loss and still be healthy, because health encompasses so much more than just what we're eating and or how much we're exercising and kind of the input versus output. And not only, it also encompasses like mental health and other forms of being healthy. So that's just kind of another one I wanted to highlight there. And then if you want to move towards challenging the food police, these are some things and practical steps you can take. So you want to examine the origin of your beliefs. So saying to yourself, like I have this thought or this belief, but like, where does it really come from? Or where have I heard this before? Is this something that has been kind of enforced in one way or another at home or at school? And really kind of dissecting the origins of the belief. And then you want to really examine the effect of this belief on your thoughts. I think sometimes, it can feel kind of automatic for us to think that our thoughts are like, that they define us and that that there's not really room to question them. And so there is some room here to really examine your beliefs and their effect on your thoughts and how they're affecting you. You can ask questions such as, should I never really eat carbs? Like, is that really true? And really just kind of challenge the logic and the reason behind that thought. And then you can also reframe thoughts to make them more reasonable. So for example, okay, so when I do not eat carbs during the day, I have less energy and tend to binge on them at night. Like, so that's you being introspective, as Lisah mentioned before, and really tuning into your own unique experience with eating carbs and then evaluating what you want to do with carbs in your life, right? And not just saying, oh, carbs are bad, I should never have carbs. No, instead of that, you're listening to your own experience with carbs and making decisions based on that. And then, of course, reflect on the result of acting on your reframed thoughts. So yeah, just experiencing some of these anti-diet concepts and really reflecting back on how that is impacting you. Has it been beneficial to kind of challenge some of these rules that we've grown to be attached to in the way that we decide how to move and how to eat?
And once you do this, you might find yourself having a little bit more anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Because
sure.
When you've done these things for years, for a lot of people, it becomes very normal and very comfortable. So that's just kind of a caveat there that you might experience some anxiety with that. But something personally that I've experienced with food freedom is that anxiety leaves once you're allowed to have all the things and the food and you kind of appreciate your body and you're doing more of those things. That anxiety actually has lessened for myself and a lot of my clients once they give themselves that permission.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, the next principle is discover the satisfaction factor. Now with this particular one, I had never really thought about this before because I used to just like eat to like fuel myself and that's it. I didn't think about my environment or how satisfied I was, or if the food was appealing to me or pleasing to the eye, or if I was sitting in a comfortable position, not having a lot of distractions. But with this particular principle, it wants you to do all of those things. And it's not the same every time. Like there might be some times that I feel like sitting at the table is going to be great for me right now. And I can really find the foods that I love and enjoy and am satisfied by them. Other times I might want to sit on the floor. I might want to sit with a friend. Those are really different things. But when it comes to this food, noticing the satisfaction factor is when you're eating your foods, have you noticed that first bite was just as enjoyable as the last bite? Or have you eaten without that intuitive nature and you've eaten past that?
Yeah.
Or you've eaten past your desired fullness and now it doesn't feel as good.
Yeah.
And that's the intuitive nature of listening to your body. Like, it tastes really good and I really enjoyed that experience, or I did it mindlessly and I didn't even know that I had finished my dish because I was doing something else.
Right. Yeah. I actually had like an epiphany the other day where I was eating a salad, and for the first time I said to myself, this tastes really good. And the reason it was tasting so good is because it's a salad that I actually wanted to eat. And it wasn't a salad that I was using to, conform to diet culture and to, the should statements that often kind of pop in our heads. I wasn't eating it because I felt like I should. I was eating it because I wanted it and it tasted so good. So that's just kind of something else to kind of keep in mind is things taste much better when you actually want them and not just when you think you should eat them.
Yeah. And that's that self-connection and that self-discovery that you had in that moment. Like, oh, this is really good because you actually wanted to eat it and you found that satisfaction in what you were doing because you wanted to and because it felt good to your body, not because an outside entity told you how you should be eating and the types of foods you should be eating all the time.
Yeah. So these are just some questions you can ask yourself as you are beginning to explore this principle and integrate it into your journey. So asking yourself things like, what do I want to eat? Like, that's something that we probably ask ourselves all the time, but we maybe don't give it enough consideration because we are quickly distracted by what we think we should eat instead of thinking about what do I really want and then actually considering that. What type of eating experience am I looking for? So similar to what Lisah was saying earlier, thinking about, not only what you want to eat, but also like what type of environment you want to eat in, what if you want to eat alone or if you want to eat with people, things like that. What would feel the best to my body right now is another good question, along with how do I want to feel when I'm done eating this? That's a really good one. So, because one of the things that might happen as you are beginning to practice some of these principles is that because you do have unconditional permission around food, you might find that you are prone to eat maybe a little bit more than what you think you should. And a part of that process is very normal because, like we mentioned before, when you're used to only applying these rules to eating, you are depriving yourself and you are restricting yourself from certain foods. And so when all of a sudden these foods become permissible, you go pretty hard on them. I mean, and you do. But that is that's a very normal response. And it's also a very temporary response. And so you will start to develop some skills. And this question in particular is very, very helpful for that, is to reflect on, okay, I ate a lot of that because, gosh, I haven't had it in so long, but I also didn't feel very good after I had X amount. So, reflecting on that and saying, okay, maybe next time when I go to eat that, I need to pay a little bit more attention to my fullness cues, which we'll get into more here in a bit as well. But yeah, so these are just some questions to help you along the way.
And that is definitely a learning curve. With everything else with intuitive eating, it's a learning curve because we're trying to go back to the ways that we actually did things early on. So when you're finding that learning curve, like, it's going to be there. There might be times that you eat more of a particular food that was previously off limits to you. Yeah. But like Lindsay said, you're eating it because now you can, and you're not actually listening to your body. But you learn that. You learn that over time. A particular experience that I love ice cream. It's a great thing. Yes. You should too. But I get ice cream from this particular place. And so when I got my ice cream, I got a couple pints of it, like Thanksgiving. I ate a spoonful of it and it sat in my freezer for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it was really good, but like I didn't eat it. Previously, I would have eaten like that whole thing. But now I know that all foods fit into what I'm doing. So that scarcity model was no longer there for me. So yeah. Another thing I want to say about some of these questions that we're asking here, just be aware that this comes from a very privileged stance. Oh, yeah. I just want, kind of want to let people know that, because if you come to somebody and say, well, what do you want to eat? That's not always an option.
Right. Yeah.
So these have got a lot of layers and a lot of nuance in it, because what you might be hungry for might not be what you can get right in that moment, or you might not be able to eat right then. So you have to kind of curtail some of those things, but just knowing that it comes from a privileged stance, but there are ways to work around this in a certain way. So just being aware of that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. And this is definitely like a very quick overview of intuitive eating. And so there are lots of layers, as Lisah mentioned. So just, keep that in mind. That's good.
Absolutely. Next is feel your fullness. Listen for the body signals that tell you that you are no longer hungry. Seems super simple.
Right.
Like super simple, but that's what it is, because a lot of times when you're engulfed in diet culture, you don't get to feel your fullness because you have pre-portioned amounts of things that you can eat.
Yeah.
And that's it. So you actually don't know what that feels like. But something that Lindsay kind of mentioned before is like knowing, okay, am I this amount of hungry? Am I this amount of hungry? Am I this amount of hungry? And then doing what you need to do in order to satisfy that. Another thing is sometimes you might eat past fullness. That's okay.
Yeah.
That happens. There might be a really good thing that you wanted to eat and you went with that. That's okay. You know, you can make an alternate choice the next time, but not trying to demonize like, well, you ate past fullness, so now I'm bad. When you do that, when you try to say you can't eat past fullness or doing something else, you have now turned intuitive eating into a diet, which it is not. That is not what it is. But listening to your body is the main thing. How does my body feel when I eat? Am I satisfied when I eat this particular food? Does it cause me any type of adverse reaction when I am eating this food and after and the days following? You know, that's what that's about. So feeling your fullness and knowing that I have these foods here for me, I enjoy them, I am satisfied by them. And now I'm full, I'm good, and I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, so these are just a few steps you could take to be able to access your fullness and really experience it. And so one of the things is eat without distractions. I don't know about you, Lisah, but I am forever either on my phone or in front of the computer or in front of the TV when I'm eating. And I don't know, well, I do know why, but that is something that makes it very difficult to be aware of your body and your experience around eating, and especially to feel your fullness. But also another thing is like sometimes eating like with people can be distracting, or like eating in a restaurant or something and there's lots of distractions. And you just kind of like, I think about like when I go to a Mexican restaurant and I just like keep going for the chips and salsa. And it's like, I'm at that point, I'm like not paying attention to my fullness. So limiting distractions is key. And also tuning into characteristics of your fullness. So again, like noticing the quality of your fullness and just really tuning into that.
Do you have an example for yours, like what your fullness cue is?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I feel like when I start to slow down a little bit, you know, when there's more pause in between the bites, then I know that that I'm getting full. I don't know. What about you?
Mine is my breath. My breath changes.
Like how?
I take more deep breaths as I'm eating. And so it's kind of the slow down piece, but
I do that too. I didn't know that.
That's what mine is. Mine is breathing a little more because I'm
because you're like trying to make room, right? Or like if you're like squirming in your seat.
Yeah.
And
everybody has different ones. That's the thing.
And oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like I literally just learned something. That's so neat. So there's so much to learn, see? And like Lisah and I have been doing this for I don't know how many years, but so even though we are putting on this little, video and teaching you guys, we always are learning things. So
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then last but not least, release old rules and allow yourself to say no. I think that one of the things that really saved me in the very beginning of my journey was, when I had, let's say, an Oreo, and then I had another one, and then telling myself, okay, like that was good, and I can have more later if I want. So I empowered myself to say no in that moment. And I told myself these Oreos are going to be here. And if I want more later, I will allow myself to have them. That shift in my brain alone was enough to get me to a point where now, like you with the ice cream, like stuff can sit in my house and I don't feel ravenous around it. And I don't feel like I have to shove it all in my face in one setting, because I know that I am not deprived, and I know that I'm going to have access to it because of my intuitive eating journey.
Absolutely. So that's that food freedom piece of just knowing that all foods can fit as long as you're not allergic, they're not moldy, and you didn't steal them.
Right.
All right, the next one, super fun one. Cope with your emotions with kindness. And this has kind of been tweaked over the years. Like I mentioned, Evelyn and Elise have been doing this for 25 years. So I think initially this was cope with your emotions without food.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've kind of tweaked that because they know that sometimes food can be comfort. Like it might be a nostalgic feeling that helps you in a moment that you needed someone in your family that is now deceased, and they made this really cool food, and you make that and you eat that, and that brings you a sense of comfort. That's okay. So you can use food. And I think that gets a bad rap sometimes. It's like, oh, well, you're emotionally eating.
Yeah.
Emotionally eating is not bad.
It's not.
And we've turned it into a really, really negative thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can help you. But it's also noticing that what are some other ways that you can kind of nourish your body, nurture your body, maybe distract it, and then cope with those feelings, whatever they are. And that's when you come to Lindsay and I and all the other amazing therapists that we have in the area to kind of talk more about these feelings that have come up and how you have typically gone just to food. And I think that's the differentiation. When you cope with just food, it might not be as healthy, but when you cope with food and some other kind of skills that people have given you or that you've learned along the way, that tends to help that much more. So just being kind with yourself, and that compassion is a really cool thing that they talk about too. Just compassion and acceptance with what's going on with you. Maybe you do need food. Maybe you need rest. Listening to your body still during all these times so you can know exactly what you need in that time.
So good. All right, so just to kind of take it and break it down just a little bit more. So when you're coping with your emotions with kindness, you want to really pause and identify and name the quality of the emotion. So not only labeling the emotion, but saying, like, maybe even rating it on a scale of 1 to 10, like if I'm feeling really sad, you know, is it an 8 sad or is it a 4 sad? And just really describing the quality of that emotion, or even using different feelings, like, you know, if I'm angry or frustrated, like, you know, a more intense quality of that emotion might be like enraged. And so really tuning into the emotion and naming it, and then checking in to see, what is the feeling telling me that I need? I love this one. Because anytime we feel anything, any type of emotion is a way that we are getting communication about a need that we have that needs to be met. And so that's a really neat way to kind of check in and notice what we need, and then figure out a way to meet that need that makes the most sense and fills that need in the best way. How can I meet this need in a compassionate and effective way? I love that question. And then reflect on favorite ways to self-nurture. This one's really important. You want to like be kind of proactive and maybe even have a list on your fridge of like, these are 10 things that I love to do that are self-nurturing to me. So that when you're in a moment of like crisis, right, you can have that to refer to. Yeah. Because when we're feeling really emotional, we don't have access to that part of the brain that is most logical. And we might not have the ability to really think critically about what we need to do. And so having a list on hand that we've already prepared ahead of time could be really helpful for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah. All right, principle 8, respect your body. Ooh, it's a tough one.
Yes.
It's such a tough one. And part of this is because of the messages that we've been given as a society about what bodies deserve respect and which ones don't. But that's a whole nother thing.
Whole other layer.
So I'm just going to encourage you to respect your body as you practice intuitive eating. You know, accept it for what it is right now, not the body you may have had previously or the body you think you might have in the future. Respect your body for what it is now. And something that I love to do with clients is just doing some activities that encourage that appreciation for body, even if you don't love your body, which is very difficult and challenging. And that's not always the goal, and that's not necessary, but really practicing that respect and that appreciation for your body is something that's can be really, really, really transformative.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely.
So these are some practical questions you can ask or ways you can reflect more on this. First one is, how can I accept my now body, which really just kind of emphasizes what Lisah was describing earlier. Really embracing the body that you have now is so important. And then, what are aspects of myself I appreciate that are unrelated to my body? This is one of my favorite things that I work on with clients, is like helping them explore what makes them who they are that has nothing to do with their body? Like, what are the things about their personality or their values or their gifts and skills that make up who they are? What are the things about their experiences that make up who they are? So that's really important to do. And then how can I curate my social media feed to be more body inclusive?
Love that one.
That is so good. So we are like consciously aware, right, of the things that we are taking in on social media. And then there's all the subconscious stuff that we're not even aware of that we are taking in and downloading when we are scrolling and when we are consuming information and media. So it's really important that when you're on this journey to be cognizant of what is in my feed that is not helpful or that is drawing me closer to diet culture, and how can I curate that to be more intuitive based or body inclusive, things that are going to encourage me on this journey.
Absolutely. That's a great one. That's one of my favorite ones too, just because you can change up your social media feeds to include different size bodies,
yes,
different ethnicities and races of bodies, like able-bodied people and non-able, like it's just something that you can have that gives you a different perspective all the time that can be really helpful to you kind of accepting your body where it is. Another thing that I like to mention, there's a book, and I don't think we put it on a resource page, but we can.
Okay.
But it's a book called Body Respect. It's perfect for this particular thing, and it is by the creator of the Hays community, which is Health at Every Size. It's Lindo Bacon. And so this book is really just about respecting your body, again, at any size. You know, that's what you can do, and you can have health at any size. Health is not a size. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. We need to make that a hashtag.
Yeah. I think somebody already
probably already
but that's
did.
fine.
Right. Okay, whatever.
Movement. Feel a difference. Principle 9. One of my favorite ones because I love good movement in the body. Yeah. When you move in a way that brings joy or aliveness, you are truly nourishing your body, mind, and spirit. And that's what intuitive eating is. It's for the entire parts of you, mind, body, and spirit. And so movement previously was exercise. And this is just another transformative time with the intuitive eating journey over the past 25 years is that they changed that because movement is what you want it to be. So movement can look different for everybody. I like going to the gym. I like lifting heavy and I like jumping. That's what I do. I like it. Other people, it can be yoga. I do yoga too. It can be cleaning. It can be playing with your kids.
Gardening.
It can be riding a bike. It can be dancing. That's another one of my favorites.
Yeah,
I just kind of like move my body. So figuring out what that movement is for you and feeling the difference that it has in you. So there might be certain movements where you're like, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like how I feel when I move in that particular way.
Yeah, what's yours?
That I don't like. I'm not a runner.
Yeah,
nope,
running's
no
terrible.
thanks.
And I hate burpees. Like,
See, and I love those.
Uh,
See, look at that. Just that different right here is that I love a burpee. I think those are great.
No,
you couldn't pay me to run. No, thank you. But just noticing that and noticing how your body feels, you can practice this doing whatever activity it is that you think you like. Notice how you feel before, notice how you feel during, and notice how you feel afterwards. You know, that's just a simple way to kind of do that. And then you can find the things that help you feel the best. And that could change from day to day.
Yeah.
Like you might love riding your bike on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, you're like, I don't want to do that. Or I'm sore in a different area. So I don't want to do that. And that's where that rest comes into play too. Movement, feel the difference is perfect. But also when you're not moving, you can feel the difference as well, because that's when rest is necessary. And again, your body gives you these signs and signals that might be telling you, hey girl, or boy, or guy, or whomever, chill out. Just take a rest. So that's really, really important. And you can see just how your body changes when you actually are intuitive about the things that you're doing to move your body and not doing it as a chore, which is what diet culture tells us to do. Like, hey, you have to do this because you ate that. Now you have to do this. Or in order to eat that, you have to do this. Nope, we're just moving to feel the difference, to see if that can give us some energy, make us feel good, enjoy the way that we feel in our body.
Yeah. Good stuff. So this really just kind of reiterates a lot of what we just talked about. So diet-centric exercise says I need to burn X amount of calories for this workout to count, or I can't skip my workout today. I've got to get up and push through it and work out. Whereas mindful movement says all movement is meaningful and it's okay to rest when I need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, the last one in our intuitive eating journey, principle 10, is honor your health with gentle nutrition. Make food choices that honor your health and taste buds while making you feel well. So this is a really cool one. And I feel like Evelyn and Elise put this at the end for a reason.
Yeah.
Not that you have to do these in any particular order, but I feel like if people try to do gentle nutrition too early in their intuitive eating journey, it will turn into a diet.
It will. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, well, I have to eat this much, or I have to eat this many of this group, and I have to eat this much of this group. That's not what this gentle nutrition is saying. It's really just noticing like, hey, maybe I noticed that I had a lot of this particular group and I haven't actually had any of this other group. Let's see how I feel if I integrate a little bit of this.
Yeah.
And this gentle nutrition is more along the adding things and not the removing of things.
Ooh, I like
you know?
that. Yeah.
It's like, hey, maybe I'll add some protein. Maybe I'll add some greens. Maybe I'll add some fats. Maybe I'll add some carbs instead of, hey, we got to take all the carbs away. We got to take all the dairy away. Yeah. It's really just about adding these things to come up with the best kind of, I don't know, kind of mixed bag of things that helps your body feel and perform at its top. You know, that's what it is.
That's good. So with honoring your health with gentle nutrition, you really want to assess your food body choice congruence. So that just means like, how are you choosing to eat? You know, are you choosing to eat based on what you and your body is wanting, or are you choosing to eat based on what you think you should eat or what everyone else is eating? What foods make you feel the most nourished, and what meals are convenient yet sustainable? So I want to talk about this one for a minute too, because sometimes like with meal preparation or meal planning, you see that a lot in the diet culture world where when someone is on a really strict diet, maybe on a Sunday, they prepare all their meals for the week and they pack them all up and portion them all out. And that's not in and of itself bad. And the way that intuitive eating would look at that is saying, you know, if you're doing that for preparation and organization and knowing, you know, maybe that you don't have enough time to prepare your meals throughout the week and you want to nourish your body, that is okay. That's okay. And so sometimes you also want to consider like planning ahead. Planning ahead is not non-intuitive. It is very intuitive, actually. And like also like having stuff that's accessible that you can snack on if you need to. Because when we are like super duper hungry, we tend to like just grab whatever is most convenient or most accessible, quick, which is not bad, but also with gentle nutrition, you want to consider, you know, what are the things that are going to help me get through my day? What are the things that are going to be, you know, convenient to make or have prepared or whatever. So that's just like, you know, another way to kind of look at that.
What might give me the most energy throughout my day?
Yeah.
If I know I'm only going to have a certain amount of time because I have meetings back to back to back, what's something that I can eat that I know gives me the most energy and is going to sustain me a little bit longer?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
So do you have any of those foods that you feel like sustain you a little bit more?
I really like actually I'm thinking right now in my fridge here in my office, I have some of those like Chobani yogurt things that have like the little flip crunchy things on the side. I know it's really specific, but that's what I really like as like an on-hand snack kind of a thing whenever I need it, or like a Lara bar or something, because those are like super, they taste good. And I feel like they're very, you know, nourishing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Okay. I am a beef jerky person all day.
Oh, yes.
I love beef jerky. I have it in my drawer and I'm like, oh, I need something. I'm like, ooh, it's a little salty. It's got some protein in it. And it kind of helps me get through those moments.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with all this, everybody's different.
Yeah.
Like that's the
I
whole.
do love beef jerky.
It's good. It's delicious.
We can talk later. I was going to ask you more, but we can talk later.
Okay. But yeah, intuitive eating, it's really just about knowing what's going to work best for you, but also noticing that like diet culture is a business and it's really not looking out for you and your health, even though it comes in different forms and names and things that have been like, oh, it's wellness now, or it's a lifestyle change now, you know, and just changing those things. But that really doesn't allow you to be an intuitive eater at all, because these things are always telling you what you can eat, when you can eat, how much of it you can eat. With that, Serving sizes are suggestions, just so
Mm.
you all know that. That's what that is. Like, it's okay if you want to eat more than a serving or less than a serving. But
Yeah.
listening to your body and knowing how that feels for you is really the biggest thing. And so if there's nothing else that you take away from this, I hope it's listen to your body, not all the messages that everybody else has given you, not even us. Like, I don't want you to
Yeah.
listen to what I am saying and just do what I said, but I'd love for you to listen to your body and see what it's actually telling you.
Yeah.
All right.
And check out the resources that we have here that can also help you along your way. A lot of this information that we compiled and gave you today is based on a lot of the work that Evelyn and Elise have done with intuitive eating. So those are the resources there. And then we also just wanted to give you our contact information. So if you're wanting to learn more about the kind of work Lisah does or the kind of work I do, you can find us both here at our contact info, and we're both on Instagram.
Absolutely.
And you can email or call, and we would be happy to connect with you. So thank you so much for listening to us and watching us. And we hope that you have learned a little bit more about intuitive eating.
Yeah. Thanks so much.